Roger was like, I just want to get partial. Well, what's the VIP treatment? Do every Thursday. Partial every.
Tell you what, JD, my son took me to, him and his wife took Cheryl and I to last
Or,
night,
like, it doesn't,
the Mormon play,
Were they good?
especially,
Where is it?
the play center. It was very awkward. I mean,
You said very awkward.
very awkward. It was just ridiculous. I mean, they were, I get that those people are very talented.
Oh, he already did.
Call to order the Ordinance Review Subcommittee meeting for Tuesday, February 2nd. Please stand for the pledge. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic which stands one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Have the roll call, please.
Jason Asbury,
Here.
Jim Dodger, David Hopper,
Here,
Brian Holman,
Here.
David Mills,
Here.
Jacob Pack.
I'm assuming the minutes are on the iPad too, David? Okay. Yeah, so minutes are there from our
Yes,
last
they are.
meeting, so if you guys
You
want,
have a hard copy sitting
Yeah.
there in front of you to sign.
you guys want to take a look, make sure we don't have any revisions, and we'll take a motion to accept.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from the previous meeting.
No, second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ever who left me a pen, I appreciate it. All right, next part is citizens' concerns. That's for any citizen that would like to bring a concern before the subcommittee that's not going to be discussed in the agenda. Too cold. Fair enough.
Noted.
It's not any warmer up here. Let the record reflect there's no citizens' concerns. All right, so discussion on possible and impossible decisions on several text amendments tonight. I think we'll probably start, David, with the site plan review. We can go from there. So what's going on here? What reason I'd called this one is, David, I'll let you probably explain, or staff here in a second, but my understanding is if you need to go before the BZA, hang on. Jacob, you on?
Yep.
Let the record reflect Jacob Pack is on the phone. We're just getting started, bud. You need to go before the BZA for a special use or a variance. As of right now, Article 1500 is the site plan review article, and what is required for an applicant for the site plan is rather extensive from an engineering perspective and is extremely costly to stand before the BZA to be potentially denied. Am I correct in saying that special use, anything before the BZA from a commercial, non-residential, requires this site plan review as the ordinance is currently?
You say special permit, new construction?
Special permit, new construction, variance, et cetera.
Hey, Dave, can you help me navigate the folders on here? I know one of them's labeled BZA, the other
Yeah,
one's
The
checklist.
things we're talking about right now, you'll look in the BZA folder.
Okay, thank you.
The articles within the BZA folder will be 1,500, 1,100, and 2,100. What did I say? I'm sorry, 1150, 1,100. Sorry, I saw the 5, and 2,100. Sorry. And the conditional approval document and some West Virginia code. So you were mentioning the site plan review. That is true relative to the site plan review. For the variance, you don't have these stringent requirements that you do for the site plan review. But one of the things we wanted to talk about tonight, obviously, was the fact that a potential developer would hire an engineering firm to prepare a fully engineered set of plans for a site plan review, and flip of the coin, they may make it,
Yeah,
may be
I mean,
approved, and they may not.
I mean, this came up, I'll be transparent, this came up as a tear-down project that we have a client who needs to go before the BZA. From an engineering, in the engineering world, this is dumb for me to be sitting here doing this because it's bad for business, but it's right for people that want to do business in the county, and it's right for anybody that lives here, in my opinion. But to go through the BZA requirement to get a special use and a variance, this particular client's going to spend close to $30,000 to prepare what's outlined here in this site plan review section to stand before the BZA and may be denied. To me, there's a far simpler approach that we could hopefully get to of what should be required to go before the BZA to simply get a yay or nay that your special use or your variance would be approved.
And my understanding that our ordinances are requiring that it go to the BZA, so our goal is to allow, or not necessarily allow, but to potentially modify these to keep that approval potentially in-house, right?
Well,
Potentially.
I mean, I look at it twofold. I think there are some of these things that once you had your BZA approval, if the BZA approved your request, you would still need to go back and fulfill some of these to get your actual engineering review and approval done in-house. Because right now, if you go before, if you fulfill all these obligations as it's outlined in Article 1150, you go get your BZA approval, then you can go to work. You don't need to come back through planning. However, that's an expensive roll of the dice, in my opinion. Especially when you get into variance requests and things of that nature.
So basically, if this was, the same hurdles have to be overcome to get to the finish line, but we're looking at a process that the BZA can give a preliminary approval, yes or no, give them the opportunity to hear what their concept plan would be, and then if they like the concept plan, if it checks all the boxes, they could give a preliminary approval that makes sense, now go spend the money and
do the
cross our
engineering.
T's and dot our I's.
So I'll go through just so everybody knows, right now, if you got to go before the BZA, this is from a planned engineering perspective, this is what's required from a site plan. Date, north arrow, legal description, tax parcel, applicant, signature of applicant, existing and proposed zoning, existing and proposed use of structures, existing and proposed contours at an interval appropriate for proper review, actual dimensions, size, square footage, shape of lot to be built upon, shown on an actual survey by a surveyor or an engineer, certification by a land surveyor or engineer that the dimensions and bearings are accurately delineated, location of lot with respect to adjacent right-of-ways, total number and type of building units, proposed gross floor area, etc., location, shape, exterior dimensions, square footage, height of each proposed structure, location, shape, exterior dimension, location of landscape areas, or to be detailed on a landscape plan, fences, walls, screening requirements, standard yard setbacks, location, grade, and dimension of paved surfaces and all abutting streets, curb radii, location of barriers and parking spaces, raised islands, location type of screening, location of fire hydrant, location of all drainage facilities, location and size of utility lines, location of signs, location of garbage collection, soil test and similar information if deemed necessary by the county engineer, approved state of West Virginia sediment erosion control plan, state of West Virginia NPDES permit if applicable, 3 copies of stormwater analysis, 3 copies of a drainage plan, 3 copies of drainage calculations, 3 copies of the design of the stormwater management facility if applicable, stormwater analysis and drainage plan, DOH highway permit, traffic impact study, health department approval, water sewer plan approval, lighting plan, landscape plan, signage plan, traffic circulation plan, and DNR if necessary. This is a full set of CDs to simply go stand in front of the Board of Zoning and Hearing to potentially be denied up front.
I'm sorry, moved you, buddy.
Yeah.
Hey, have you taken a look at any of the other counties and saw what their requirements were in this situation?
I have not. I'm a little familiar with what Charleston requires, and it's a real stripped-down version site plan that doesn't require extensive engineering.
That's what I was thinking. With that in mind, have you thought about what you would form a fix for this situation look like?
Yeah, I would strip majority of this out and allow you to simply put this on an aerial image, detail out the use and what you, and easily detail out what you need to get for your variance. I mean, 95% of this, in my opinion, is unnecessary to simply go before the BZA. Now, there is some of this that is necessary to get your approval through the county when you actually get your approval from the BZA. There's also some of this, in my opinion, that we've changed in other sections of the ordinance, and this needs to come in line with that for non-BZA requirements.
What's this?
Yeah, I mean, Jacob, I know you don't have this in front of you, but if you guys go to what, Article 1150, and under Section D, I would think that you could eliminate G, N, R, U, V, W, X,
Hang on, Jason.
So you're 15 or
1150, yeah. Yes, sir.
You're in 1150D.
Yeah, 1150D, required data.
You said, could you repeat that again, please?
Yeah, G, some of it is, you could honestly probably eliminate. We could tweak I, HI, could tweak N. I don't believe you need to grade out your roads. It's shown on P. I don't think you necessarily need to show any parking barriers. I mean, this really should, Dave, in our world, this should be a conceptual site plan that shows what you need from a variance without high-level engineering.
Wouldn't that be under item B within the same section though? Because it says site plan review shall prepare and submit 7 copies of the site plan. And then this required data is almost items that should be required after whatever variance has been approved by the BZA. And some of this could be, stripped down, changed.
Stripped down, changed,
but
right.
It just seems that brunt of that work is where the issue is, right? That's
Absolutely. But you're going to do a ton of this work and with no guarantee that you're going to get approved. Nope.
So, I'd just like to make it clear that this 1150 isn't specifically a BZA article. That, this is a site, excuse me, site plan review article that is relevant to the BZA when requiring a special permit.
Yeah, I mean, we need to give some type of relief.
I think D in the list that you listed off, right, it's pretty extensive. That's a site plan review for new construction. Which, if it's new construction, lighting, the location of the dumpster, that type of thing is relevant. If you're only going to get a variance to encroach on, say, the rear setback, I don't necessarily think a light plan is relevant to encroaching on a 5-foot setback, right?
Agreed.
But I don't think D applies to the variance aspect. I think D
Special
is
permit.
only for site plan reviews.
If that is the case, and I'm going to get probably a little off topic here, but if that is the case, I am curious to know why my applicant was told that before he could go before the BZA for a variance and a special use permit, he had to fulfill all of these requirements and submit into staff that's outlined in D. And this is recent, my BZA hearings in March.
Well, as we understood the Chuck Steiner situation, it was a situation of expedience. Whereas if he didn't go for the variance and the special permit at the same time, he may lose the property. Is that correct?
That is accurate, but if what Jonathan is saying, he still should have been able to go before the BZA for both of those without fulfilling Section D here.
The simpler way to put it is if you're only asking to encroach on a setback, rear side, front, whatever, in my opinion, just focusing on a variance in an encroachment in a setback, a lighting plan is relevant. The location of your dumpster may be relevant, right? But knowing that you're 15 foot from a property line, that's relevant in a variance, right?
Agree. That's the variance you're going for.
It's a different conversation if it's a full-blown site plan review, which is what this is actually, Article 1150 is actually titled, right, site plan review.
Yes.
I don't know the varying things relatively still new to some of this stuff. Site plan review, I understand the concept. I understand but don't deal a whole lot with special use permits, right? Speed is one thing, right? But if you're asking, could you have gone to the BZA for justified with setback variance? Yes.
We probably need to separate this out, but we also need to make sure that from a change of use or special use, D shouldn't be applied to that either. Because if I want to come in here and get a special use permit for my proposed use, I shouldn't have to provide full engineering drawings to be told, no, that use is not going to be approved by this board or the county commission or whoever. It's a little cart before the horse.
I see that. I can agree with that.
So I fully understand the need for the site plan review. And realistically, what the site plan review is really should just be called engineering review of new construction drawing review. This is a set of CDs, is what we're asking for, and asking our applicants to provide to get a change of use or to get a special use, et cetera. Yeah, because, my understanding, there's no avenue to get that without providing right now everything in D. And whether that's required to go for the BZA's here in both. So.
At all about what the requirement is. Might as well just go ahead and do it up right now.
Can you say that again, Jacob?
My opinion, if there's ever been any confusion at all, if there's confusion about what's required and what's not.
Yeah, so, Yeah, so what Jacob's saying is there seems to be confusion on what's actually required for these, and that's what we need to clean up. That's step one.
Well, this, correct me if I'm wrong, but for the special permit, site plan review, Article 1150, would be, according to the BZA, be required for them to approve that permit.
Okay, then we need to strip out what's required on the site plan for them.
Okay, right. So that, yeah, that's what we need the Ordinance Review Subcommittee here to talk about, and then we, as a staff, can present a proposed text amendment to the Planning Commission.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. We need to separate out, the site plan review, the way, I interpret this is being used as a catch-all. So if you're going to come stand before the BZA, you got to do all the site plan. I wouldn't do it. I'd take my business to Cabell County, I'd take my business to Kanawha County. I wouldn't jump through this unnecessary hoop and spend the money from an engineering perspective to be told no.
So what would we consider reasonable to be required on a site plan to go before the BZA?
What I would consider reasonable would be a sketch drawing that shows your intended use, design, early, what we call planimetric design of your site, and what variances are you needing to request. A realistic one little page conceptual site plan. And you sure don't need grading, you sure don't need stormwater, you sure don't need MPDS approval. On my page 107, from 2 to 18 should be stricken out for that.
But we still need to scale back 1 too, right?
Yeah, we
That's
still
the
need to
thing.
scale back D. We need to
Yeah,
scale back 1.
D1,
Yeah,
sorry.
D1, sorry. I think D1, A, B, C, D, E, F, absolutely, no problem. G, I don't see the need, when you're looking at this from a BZA perspective, the need for proposed and existing contours. You may have them, but I don't see the need for it. It shouldn't be a requirement.
I don't see how that's relevant.
I don't either.
Say A through G.
He's saying A through F they're good with. He's saying G, he's considering G, I, N, P currently.
Yeah, I don't think a individual should have to hire a surveyor they obviously can, but have to hire a surveyor or an engineer to pull together a sketch. Most of them will, but I'll leave that up to you guys which is kind of H and I here. You should be able to take your boundary or your plat, your tax plat, and sketch this on there and show what you need to do. Or at least have that as an option.
Yeah, I look at this as, what's the intent, right, of
Right.
the use of the property, and if what we require can illustrate that intent without having to go through undue costs that will have to be done once it is
Yeah,
approved.
once it's
then
approved.
I think I would be okay with stripping out anything that, and I'm going to rely on you, Jason, and potentially Dave, because this is your all's world, what's appropriate and what's not.
When you say sketch, do you literally mean like flip a piece of paper over the back?
I should be able to take this right here and sketch out what I need, if I wanted to get a change of use and a variance. I should be able to, if I'm getting a variance on a setback, because I can't build off this, right? So I should be able to show my property boundary, show that the existing setback is 25 feet, show that, and I can draw it by hand, and then show that my variance is asking that to be reduced to 10. Or whatever.
Are these requirements listed elsewhere with regards to approval?
That would be a question.
So everything that's listed here, because a lot of it I don't see is unreasonable after you get a permit. So I'm curious as to where this is also cited with regards to, other plans, ordinances, whatever. And if it's something we either can move to a different part, or
I think you're almost.
if it's listed somewhere else, it's you need it at the front end, you also need to comply with it afterwards, then in that case, you just get rid of what's we feel is unnecessary. But if what they've done when they constructed this new, forgive me for not, knowing where this is cited elsewhere, but if they've done this and say, get it all now, and then we'll consider it done, and then you don't have to do it later, if that's the case, then move it to the post-approval portion, and you still have it, I don't want to get rid of some of it altogether, like some of the permits, you need them, but it's just, I agree entirely with the concept of what we're discussing. And the
It's
fact
almost
that
like you need to
why
create
get
a-
it when you don't know for sure if this is even going to be approved, and the cost and the burden and the time that it takes to do that. So if it's just simply, my question really is, I guess, is this a requirement elsewhere? And if it's not, since they are establishing it here, just move it.
So, Mr. Holman, your point being that keep these requirements, but only after a special permit or variance is allowed.
Yeah, and I feel like, I know that we've dealt with so many other portions, I feel like a lot of this is mentioned in other, in other areas. I just want to make sure that we're not throwing something completely out in the pre-approval
Right.
stage, just, if it is, then make sure that it's listed in the post-approval.
Yeah, it's almost like we're creating a whole new section. That, and, 1150 can stay, and then we can, there's things that we might want to look at to tweak actually in 1150, but create a new section of the ordinance for what's required for going to the BZA from a site plan perspective. What's your thoughts, Dave?
What is the majority of items and topics that go to the BZA? I remember I had an experience there years ago because I was going to do a campground, and the rules were it had to be blacktopped. And obviously I spent a lot of money with that engineer just to find out, that was a disaster. But basically, it would have been nice not to spend any money, but I could have gone and said, I'm going to do the campground, it's going to be laid out like this, but I need to have a variance because I want gravel versus blacktop, because in my situation, campgrounds are more gravel related, that getting back to nature, getting some space. And that would have been nice not to have to spend the money to do all the engineering, just say conceptually, yes, we would allow gravel. What is more common BZA? Is that just sitbacks? Is that?
Do you guys know?
Yeah, and I think that Dave's example is an excellent one to have the conversation about as it's in the past. So, for example, Dave chose to do a campground, and as we worked our way through it, we found out that he wanted to do gravel drives. So it came to point that it was found out that the gravel drives was needed after the site plan for the special permit was already submitted. Let's pretend that didn't happen. Let's just say Dave says, hey, I want to do a campground, it needs a special permit, but I really don't want to have concrete, hard, impervious roads. Okay, so Dave has options. Dave may do a full submission at that point, which is where we were, if I remember correctly, of the special permit, the whole new construction, and do the variance together. When you hear the topics like that together in the same night, in a special permit and a variance, then yeah, you do need all the items. But if he was interested in...
What do you mean by all the items in that case?
Meaning the plan set, the drainage, the engineering.
Why for a special use and a change of material?
Well, can I finish my first thought? Because if I don't, I might get off track. So, Dave had options. And had he chosen to, before he went to the engineer and had everything designed, but had more or less what I'll just call a plotted out layout. Here's where I want campsites, here's where I want roads. But I really am interested in doing gravel as opposed to impervious surface. Then what could have chosen to be done is take that layout, that plot out layout, and we could go to the variance, to the BZA and talk to them about it and see when we get a decision on gravel as opposed to impervious surface before he goes to do the design for the special permit. That's the way we operate now. That's on the table. So if someone is interested in saying, hey, this is where my interest lies, I'm not up for spending a lot of money because my decision is going to be based on if I want to follow through or not on a variance, like gravel. If he did not want to do the project because he did not want to do impervious surface, you could apply for a variance. You can really submit not a lot of information, quite frankly, gravel instead of impervious surface. There's not much to it. And we could go to the BZA, see what they say. It's their decision to make. Yes, no, or, table at that point. But, and that would be, let's say, in a February meeting. If the answer is no, variance denied, then he knows where he stands as far as if I want to proceed and design my project, then they've already told me I have to have impervious surface. If the answer is yes, you can have gravel roads, then he can go yay, because that's what he wanted, and then he could go and design his project with gravel roads, and that answer had already been given, and then that public hearing would be held at a time later after the design come through, and the rest of the submittal come through and was reviewed for a special permit. They don't have to be held the same night. Those are all design choices people make.
I think where the confusion is, sorry to interrupt though, is that sounds like the resolution that we're trying to have is to bypass a lot of the costs up front before going, or getting an idea of what the BZA is going to rule before maybe a hearing.
And that's why, my personal opinion is during the conversation when y'all hash it all out, it's very important to separate the topic of variance and the topic of special permit.
Okay, now,
They're not the same thing.
I agree. Now, special permit still goes before the BZA, correct?
Yes, they do.
Okay, so let's separate that out. Why is all this needed for a special use? Because it needs to come out.
Okay, well, if you'll go to Article 1100, there it's in your packet.
The BCA
Awesome.
subfolder on your iPad.
And if you read 1100.01 purpose, that is what the BZA is charged in doing. And in a nutshell, at the very end, there's much more to it, but it says that it shall provide a method whereby it can be determined whether or not a use would cause any damage, hazard, nuisance, or other detriment to persons or property in the vicinity. Well, for
Okay.
them to make, these types of judgments and decisions, they have to have information to stand.
So in my world, or in my way of thinking, a special use request is very similar in a rezoning request. You still have to answer very similar questions that a rezoning is not going to cause irreparable harm to the surrounding community, blah, 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 blah. We don't require a detailed site plan for that. There is a ton of, and I guess my next question is, I'm a code guy, so where in 1100 does it say that for a special use, I have to go back here and submit this site plan as outlined in D?
In 1100.01.
There's nowhere in there that references back to 1100D and 1100.01.
It says through a site plan review process. next to last sentence,
Through a site plan review process.
which is Article 1150, the next one is site plan review.
I would have argued that if that was the intent, it should have been through a site plan review process as outlined in Article 1150D. With that being said, since that's the thing with special use, let's look at stripping this crap out. Because you're going to make somebody, again, spend 30 grand to be told their use ain't going to work.
So over to 115003, B, site plan review. So I believe that's obviously what 1100 is referring to, but then we have section D underneath that. Those probably need to be combined in some capacity. They shouldn't be separated, because the required data is the required data under the site plan review, right? So we just need to determine what needs to be stripped out.
Right.
Seems like almost everything below G, and again, I'm not an expert by any means, but most of that stuff would be extremely costly.
Let's tackle this in two parts. We probably need to read,
And if I may say one more thing, that I'm not real clear on what your interest is. If your interest is talking about 1150 solely in regard to special permit, or if it is just overall site plan new construction, because this one runs for both, with or without a special permit.
So the first thing that I'm interested in is alleviating the unnecessary cost that's put on applicants from 11D from a special use permit for the site plan. The second one is to make sure that 1150 overall is in line with the rest of our ordinances.
If I may again, so if you just particularly strip out of 1150, like you're speaking of D, you just, let's only just pick one. Location, shape, exterior dimensions, square footage, and height of an existing structure. Just grabbed one sporadically. If you strip that out, that's not stripping it out just for a special permit, it's stripping it out, period, across the board.
Yeah, I understand that.
Okay.
What if we,
I think we need a new section.
just to bounce this idea off, what if there was a, again, this is just off the top of my head, what if we had the required data in 1150 for a new construction drawing review, but, you know, we also put forward a proposed text amendment for site plan review relative to special permit, as opposed to,
I think that's a great idea. That was going to be my suggestion.
okay.
From a special use permit for anything that, I want to make sure that the site plan review right now is only required, if I need a special use permit, there's nothing else that I need up front that's going to require this other than a special use. Excuse me. So we need a site plan that's specific to special use permit. And that can be a text amendment with a new article, new section.
That's that's a relatively simple proposed text amendment to draft up to present to the full body.
Yeah, I mean, you can ignore, when you look at that, everything that's on from section, number 2 through 18. That would not be required for the special use. I don't think you need to show grading. If you put it in there, I'm going to make a motion to take it out at the full, well, I can't make a motion, but I don't think G needs to be in. I do agree that you should show the location dimension of paved surfaces, budding streets. Don't believe you need to show grading. Because again, none of this is, you guys will still have the opportunity to review the engineering. I'm not asking or trying to strip out, engineering review.
After a special permit.
Yeah, after a
is awarded.
special permit has been done. I would also carve a path that to give the applicant a choice, if the applicant feels comfortable that his or her special permit would be approved, they can provide everything that we have in D to avoid having to come back. But I do think the applicant should be able to make that choice if they want to run that risk.
So what all are you recommending stay in for the special permit?
A through F, J, K, L, M, N, but just the location of the landscaped areas. I don't think those landscape areas need to be fully detailed. O, P, with the exception of not requiring grade. Q. S, I'm fine with. I don't see a need to draw parking barriers. So I would strip R. Screening the location and the type, and by type, I'd like it defined as vegetation and/or wall fence.
I think that's duplicated because it mentions
Oh, you're
screening
right.
and N.
Yep. T should be stricken because that is a duplicate. UVW. XY, I think could stay in. Now,
What about UVW, I'm sorry,
UVW stripped.
stripped, okay. XY,
XY is fine.
Okay.
And you other gentlemen, please, don't let me run all over this. I'm okay to jump back, I'm sorry to jump back on you, Dave. I'm okay with H staying in, but I think you could use a plat. I'd hate to see somebody have to go out and fully survey a lot. All right, thanks, buddy.
I'm not trying to simplify things too much, but I don't see why the location of the sign and location of garbage in a collection area would be too relevant either.
I'm fine to take it out. I don't either, but, so strike X and Y.
Because those are going to be required later.
Yeah, that's what required.
strike X and Y?
Yes.
Okay. What about Q? Did you say Q, strike?
I would keep curb radii.
Keep curb radius and
Curb
vision
radii,
field?
aisle width, I don't think you need the vision field. That'll
Okay.
be hammered out later. Location and dimension of parking spaces is fine.
Okay.
You're gonna show that anyway. I mean, that's basically went from a $30,000 deal to probably $5,000, which makes it a little more reasonable. Sure. A through F would remain as is. G would not be included. H would remain. I would remain.
Hold on one sec, Jason. H would remain, but the surveyor
Yeah,
requirement would.
I don't think it needs to be. I mean, you should be able, as a landowner, should be able to, you can provide this information with information available to you. So, yeah, you wouldn't have the surveyor engineer stamp which also would revise I. JKLM would remain as listed. N would remain, but just show the location of the landscape areas, no vegetation details or plants picked out. And really, you could change N to the location of landscape areas and/or screening areas. O would stay the same. P would remain, but you would remove the requirement to provide grading. 9 would remain the same. Q. Q would remain the same. R would be removed.
Wait a minute, I'm sorry, our Q, didn't we take out vision, didn't you want vision field?
Yeah, vision, yes, correct, sorry,
Okay.
David. Vision field would be removed from Q. R would be removed. S would remain. T is already being covered by, so T would be taken out because T is being handled by N. And then U, V, W, X, and Y would all be removed.
I'm comfortable with Jason's proposal, so I'll go ahead and put
Well, hang on
that.
before you do that. Also, on the next page, which is number 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, and 18 would all be removed. Now, feel free.
Okay, I am
Assuming you're still comfortable.
even more comfortable now with the additional explanation from Jason to go ahead and put his discussion topics, the items removed, and corrections as a motion for those to be adopted.
Do you want to include in that motion the relocation of those to the new code section that we discussed? Or should we do that separately?
If we're able to do that as part of that motion, I'll include that in my motion.
You should be.
And we're clear on that, David, what we talked about, just moving it.
We're going to keep, these would be two separate lists for special permit versus new construction review?
Yes.
Correct.
Right. So basically, there would be two sets, a set of criteria, what we're proposing for it to be submitted for a special permit, but yet, which would be separate for construction drawing review.
The initial site review.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Have a motion, have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Easy. Now, let me know when you're good, David. I don't want to.
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay. So on the, on your iPads here, David gave us a conditional approval agreement that's been written, and I'm in favor of the conditional approval. I don't really have any changes I would like to see on this conditional approval. My question, we're going to switch gears, and now we're just going to look at 1150 as a whole for everything. Should there be language in there that directs an applicant to this conditional approval process? Because if I read this, at least in 1150, to come before this office, I need an approved state of West Virginia, and I need 2 through 18. In other areas, we have written language in our ordinances that permits and approvals from agencies outside of the county are at the applicant's discretion, and they are required to provide those. This section 2 through 18 seemed a little contradicting to some of the changes we have made, because it's required data for a site plan review.
What if again, right off the top of my head here, what if instead of 2 through 18, we inserted the conditional approval statement that was drafted by Mr. Fry and the Planning Commission in lieu of 2 through 18?
I'm good with that. I'm also good with the language I think we have. I think it's in the subdivision ordinance.
Yeah, yeah, the conditional approval, yeah, we need to make clear, though, that it is relevant to state agencies.
State and federal.
Yeah, state and federal agencies only.
Well, state, federal, but you guys aren't going to approve West Virginia American Water. You're not going to approve Union Gas. You're not going to approve Putnam PSD.
Right.
So, which I don't consider them agencies. If we are, that's fine, but, I want to be clear with that. David, we had worked through one of the checklists, like this. It wasn't this one. I forget which one it was, but we'd added, because these were similar requirements on that checklist, and we had revised it. I think that's the revision that needs to be done in this, or the revision that needs to be presented for this section to bring that in line with how we had handled these similar items on one of the checklist applications. I'm just trying to remember which application that was.
Yeah, let's see. Okay, yeah, I've got if you'll look at, on your iPads, checklist discussion is a folder that, and of course, Article 100 in the subdivisions, we work through the requirements there, that's under major subdivision developmental plat. That's a little slightly different. Okay, if you go over to, the checklists that we put online, for zoned and unzoned commercial projects, let me find which one that is. Okay, it's ILP Appendix A and Appendix B that we put online. It's a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It's a seventh one in your checklist folder. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We got 7. If that's what you're referring to.
Yes.
Okay.
I tell you what, let's take a real quick recess. Why don't you guys read that? Because I've got some questions. It seems my way of thinking is what's outlined here. Why wouldn't that just replace 1150? Strike all of 1150.
Here. Here.
We're just getting started. best practices.
Yeah.
Both, right? Should mirror each other. Require that.
All right, sorry for the sidebar. What is the question is, what is the difference when we look at the site plan requirements here in the non-zoned, is working in the non-zoned areas more restrict or less restrictive from what's required engineering-wise in a zoned area? Is that fair question to ask, or what you guys are asking?
Dave, I want to ask your question for you, but we were looking at these and potentially
We're on Appendix A of the non-zoned areas.
Gotcha.
contemplating kind of doing a catch-all,
Yeah.
right? And the question was posed, well, was non-zone pulled out and separated because it's obviously a non-zone area, so were these requirements less restrictive than anything that would fall under zoned? Is that, Dave Hoppe?
Well, it looks like the non-zone has under item number 1, A through J, and the zoned has A through Y. So there must be more
Okay, I didn't know
boxes
zone
to
was-
check.
Yeah, there is.
I didn't see that when we first looked.
Yeah, I didn't see that either.
Yeah, zoning restrictions obviously are more stringent in the zoned, or restrictions are more stringent in the zoned areas as opposed to the non-zoned areas.
Yeah.
Is it are we kicking around using this as a format or as a base for?
Yeah, what we're kicking around is there a need to have a site plan requirement that's outlined here with these requirements that's specific to non-zoned, a separate site plan requirement that's specific for special use that we just went through, and as a site plan requirement as outlined in 1150D for zoned areas, could we combine and just have one site plan regardless of whether you're zoned, non-zoned, special use? At least to tackle the special use and non-zoned, this site plan as outlined here would be sufficient in what should be required for the special use site plan.
In non-zoned or zoned?
Non-zoned and special use.
Help me answer a question. If there should not be any special use in a non-zoned area.
Correct.
So the Board of Zoning Appeals has nothing to do with a non-zoned
In a non-zoned area, yes.
So there does have to be a difference.
Yes, there does need to be a difference there. I would agree. And really, in the special use, you would eliminate 2 and 3 on the site plan. You wouldn't need 2 and 3 as it's outlined there on the non-zoned. Really, you don't need I.
So right now, we're contemplating using this non-zone list, -2, -3, and -1I as the special permit.
Yeah, use that as ignore everything we listed out earlier.
Right.
Retype this as the special use permit site plan requirements. You'd still have this obviously as the non-zone one, but you'd have a separate one that followed this without 1I, 2, and 3.
Right.
I mean, I don't see anything else. Okay. Hey, guys, if you guys scroll down to page 2, we have site plan requirements for the unincorporated zoned areas of Putnam County. We've already done this, I guess, if I'm reading this correctly. So we have site plan requirements here for the unzoned areas that has already removed the majority of what's required in 1150. So why would we have this and 1150?
You said unzoned, but that's zoned.
This is zoned. This is
Yeah.
unincorporated zoned.
Hey, quick question, what article are you referencing? Like,
We're referencing the
ILP
the Appendix A.
and Appendix B.
Replacing language in 1150.
That's kind of my question, why the duplicate in Appendix B is for zoned commercial, industrial, multifamily, lease, manufactured home parks, why is that different than what's already in 1150? You know, I mean, we went through this, I think, last year. No, no. You go.
It's the same thing.
Same. David, do you know, I mean, is that something that 1150 should have been revised with Appendix B when we made the ILP changes?
Certainly arguable. The text amendments are, this being a living document.
Oh,
you know,
yeah,
it's-
yeah.
It's hard to catch it all. But I mean, that's certainly.
That's why we're here. I don't disagree.
You're right.
So let's go back. David, you probably should revise your motion if we are comfortable with using the checklist for non-zoned, creating that as a separate checklist for the special use site plan requirements to include A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, and J, and then remove 2 and 3, as opposed to what we had talked about earlier.
And I guess to further that, referring to Article 1150, we were going to insert special use, right? And then add those items underneath that, which is different than what's in there today. And then there was going to be the regular site plan review items. Would it make sense to, now, never mind, let me back up. I'll make a motion to adopt what Jason recommended. Go ahead and strip out the right-of-way and drainage utilities, so I, and then 2 and 3, and then reference 1150 instead of having under D, so it'd be 1150.03D, required data. Remove that, reference Appendix B under the ILP.
So basically, a D, required data reference.
Please refer to Appendix, ILP Appendix
D, B,
B, excuse me.
B.
Reference ILP Appendix B.
And at least that way, those two documents are going to be the, well, it
Everything-
references back, it's
right,
uniform.
Everything's uniform. Knew we had done.
I guess I'll ask the question, does it make sense for, and again, the non-zoned to be in line with the special use? I'll just ask that to the group. So those two requirements, because we stripped out I, 2, and 3 from the non-zoned. And again, that's for this group and the planning group as well. It's just a question I would ask.
If I hear your question right, in my opinion, I don't think it makes any difference to reference another code section, you know, pursuant to this particular code section, just to say, you know, to simplify things. I mean, you see it in state code all the time. So what you're looking to do is, as opposed in section 11, or in 1150, instead of having that list drawn out, you say the requirement will be as listed pursuant to
Appendix A.
Appendix A in the ILP.
Same thing that I just did for, Appendix B.
Yeah.
Right? So the question being, does it make, if the group would be okay going down this route, would it be okay to strip out I and then 2 and 3 from the non-zoned? Because those would have to be removed in order for those two to mirror each other. And I don't really have an opinion on that.
And the special permit site requirements from the non-zone Appendix A, of course, minus I, or 1I, 2, and 3, that would be for special permit. Am I correct? And then for...
Yes.
Pardon?
Yes, you're correct.
Oh, okay. And then for the new, basically for the new construction drawing review, it would be reference ILP Appendix B. Am I correct in that assumption?
And for the zoned areas, what Mr. Mills is asking was, does it make sense to make the special use permit site plan match the one, have one for that and non-zoned areas? Is that?
Yeah, I'm, somewhat of an unqualified opinion here, right? Because I don't live in this space.
I would say, and, Mr. Haba, jump in if you disagree, but I think for the non-zoned areas, it probably is appropriate to keep I in, which is right-of-ways and drainage easements. I think that's, because when you're looking at for commercial development, industrial development, multifamily lease and manufactured homes, that's probably appropriate, and so is probably the drainage analysis and the stormwater at that, because at that point, this document is what's going to be built off of. Whereas the special use site plan, you're not going to be engineering and building off of that. So I think it can be a little less stringent on the special use.
Okay, and that was...
I am a big fan of combining as much as we can, but this might be one of those cases where we really do need the three.
Yeah, and I'm totally okay. I just wanted to ask that question to ensure that, if we could strip, let's do it. If we don't believe it's appropriate, leave obviously this as is. So my recommendation would be to the special use, as I stated, remove I, remove 2 and 3 in section 1150, and then have 1150, whatever, 1150.03D mirror Appendix B in the ILP. Please reference Appendix B ILP.
I'll second that motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. I think that's it. Guys have any unfinished business? Anything else you'd like to discuss, either unfinished or new? Anything from staff?
We have our meeting, our planning commission meeting on the 21st. We'll be hearing a rezoning. Summers family.
I guess an updated rezoning you approved weeks ago, not for farm rezoning, was denied.
I heard. Was that the Cortland Smith one?
Which is why everybody has their preferences, right? I get that. But my primary concern would be, that gentleman is rezoning those designs.
Mhm.
There is an avenue for him to build a public utility on an RR
I can tell you if it's me, that's what I'd do.
I don't necessarily disagree with, suggestions. I think everything's open for improvement, but I think it's a different conversation if this gentleman shows up with a paper sketch requesting to put Union Oil on a piece of property that was just denied a rezoning. And if he's granted a special use permit, go for it.
Well, that's the thing, I don't think approving the use is not approving the, that's the thing we do need to make sure of. I mean, approving that special use, you still need to go back and submit your engineering drawings at that point. You just shouldn't have to provide full engineering drawings to get a special use. With that said, I'll make a motion to adjourn. Appreciate everybody.